So I'm going to say good evening to everyone and appreciate again the people who signed on online on time. Um, as I've been waiting for everybody to get their places here in the room. The people who are with me. Um, I did a lot of preparation for this webinar and wrote a fairly long blog about it. And I just wanted to check how many people in the room here or online you can raise your hands. I think online there's a way to do that. Somebody sent me a note. I'm going to just take a moment here to read it. Thank you, Tom and Nancy. How many people actually read the blog post? Almost no one. Oh well, I had a lot of fun writing it, and I have it right here if anybody wants to read it tonight. But that's good because then I can say what's in the blog post and not worry about being quite as off the cuff as I usually am. So living without criticism is actually a really big and extremely important topic. And it's important because most of us are in the habit when something comes up, when some situation comes up that frustrates or disappoints us or just makes us feel unhappy or dissatisfied, we say something about it. And so we either make a complaint or we blame somebody for our particular situation, or we accuse somebody of something that relates to our situation. We make an indictment of them, some accusation. Or the fourth thing is we judge them. We sit in judgment as though we were perhaps parents or in some superior social position, such as a boss, or we just play God. And so we blame, we complain, we indict, and we judge. And most of us do it a great deal of the time because it's very much a part of our culture. It's something that we live with pretty much every day, and it's very hard to escape it. Our car doesn't start, there's, at least the complaint about it, our computer runs slowly. That's my favorite one. That happens to me pretty much every day. At some point in the day, my computer just crawls like a snail, and it doesn't go very fast. So, and then I get mad at the computer and I complain about it and blame it for my being late or not getting things done that I need to get done and so on. So we do it a great deal. When we're doing these kinds of things, we're doing them because we're triggered. What that means is that we have had experience in our lives, and they may just be experiences where things just don't work out, or where in particular situations, very specific situations, things didn't go the way we wanted them to. As children, perhaps in school, maybe we have a teacher that criticizes us or always gives us a lower grade than we would like to see. It has nothing to do with whether or not we deserve the grade. It has to do with how we feel about it. And so that gets reinforced and gets reinforced. And so what happens is that our body, our nervous system, gets programmed to respond to specific triggers. And by the time we get to be more senior citizens, those things are very hardwired, and they will persist even as we become senile and start to fade away. It's literally true. We will continue to react. And that's one of the reasons why we describe seniors as being always like they were, only more so. It's because what's showing through are those hardwired programs, we call them memes, but they're actually neurocircuits, circuits in our nervous system, neural circuits that get stimulated by specific kinds of stimuli. And so we make those kinds of reactions. I was going to preface all of this, by the way, by saying that I had done all of this preparation for this and had written this blog post. And then I went and took a week's vacation. And I came back and I went like, I don't remember what I said in the blog, and I had to read it again in order to refresh my memory. So if there are moments where I have to pause, it's because I was on vacation and I have forgotten what it was I wanted to talk about tonight. So please forgive me if that happens. Okay, so getting triggered. It's a very, very common thing. And when we respond, we can respond in a whole bunch of ways. We're responding to a feeling of discomfort or pain or anguish or frustration, some kind of a negative feeling. Something is going on inside of us. And we respond to that then with specific kinds of behaviors. We may say things. We may do things like throw things or stomp our feet or whatever we've learned to do over our lifetime. Some people get very aggressive when they're triggered, when they're frustrated. And so they'll just go and do whatever it is that they do. Some people have behaviors that we call self-destructive. They may use recreational chemicals, alcohol, and so on. Or they may do other things like, not go to bed when they really should be going to bed when they're, when they're tired, or engage in all other manner of behaviors that really are taking things out on themselves. And the important thing to understand then about complaining, about criticizing, all those elements of criticizing, blaming, complaining, indicting, and judging, is that they don't actually make the situation better. And in most cases, we don't address our concern, I will call it, to the people or persons who might be able to do something about the situation. Obviously, if your computer's running slowly, there's probably nothing you can actually do about that. You may invest in some more memory or a larger hard drive or a faster processor. But fundamentally, you're not going to be able to do anything about it. But if you're having trouble in a work situation, either with a peer or a boss, or you're in school, or just in a social situation, and you have a problem, and you take that problem to someone else, a friend, a partner, or just, somebody in a eating establishment or other, when you're out with socially with people, and you just start mouthing off about stuff and complaining about things, you're not taking your problem to the person or people with whom you're going to work it out. And as a result, your problem persists. It doesn't get better. And what you're doing is simply reinforcing those neural circuits that create that stress reaction in you. You're now programmed to react to certain stimuli. Your boss says something about not liking your work, or you're putting pressure on you to get more done or to meet a deadline or whatever. Or if you're in school, that you're getting negative feedback about the quality of your work or that kind of thing. Whatever those situations are, your reaction is getting programmed, and it becomes, as I said, what we call a meme within us. And those circuits then last pretty much the rest of our lives until we reprogram them. And so, first of all, when you're criticizing in any way, any of the components of that, you're creating a stress reaction within yourself. You're wearing down your own body. And some people who do it a great deal, they're basically live in a constant state of arousal, it's called, of the sympathetic nervous system. You're doing the fight or flight response within your body all the time. It's very stressful and very dangerous for your body. And eventually you may develop high blood pressure, hardening of the arteries, or other diseases may come. You may even develop cancer or some other autoimmune disorder, or some other serious disease may develop, simply because you have established that program within you. So criticizing others, and not to their face, Criticizing to their face, of course, doesn't usually solve the problem either, but that's a whole different issue, which I'm about to get to. But criticizing others to someone else definitely doesn't solve your problems. It just reinforces the stress reaction that's taking place within you. Criticizing to someone else, that is complaining to someone else about their behavior, you probably have noticed by now, as most of you are what should we call mature, that it doesn't really make the situation better, right? It's not an effective strategy. And so when we start talking about solutions to this situation, the situation of criticizing, blaming, complaining, indicting, and judging, when we start talking about that, one of the most effective things that we can do is to draw on the principles of nonviolent communication founded by Marshall Rosenberg, now taught by many, many people. It's available pretty much all around the world. And you can read books about it and read up on it online. There's been a lot written about it. And the basic principle of nonviolent communication is to remember that the purpose of communication is to establish connection with someone, to create a relationship with someone that actually works. Because when you think about it, why would you want to create a relationship that doesn't work? Yes, you may get away with it for a while. Certain rather prominent people in this country are very good at using very violent communication and getting away with things for a while. But it won't last forever. And it can't last forever because it offends everybody. Only the people who are most loyal feel good about it. Everybody else feels bad about it. And people will not put up with that indefinitely. And so the value of nonviolent communication is self-evident, I think it's fair to say, that when we try to develop a working relationship with others, a real connection with others, then we have an opportunity to have our own needs met. And of course, while we're doing it, the other principle of nonviolent communication is that everyone's needs get met as best as possible. Now, sometimes, of course, it does happen that we have to agree that we're going to disagree and not everybody's needs will be met, or maybe even nobody's needs will be met. That does occasionally happen. But usually when we establish connection, we're suddenly able to find ways that people's needs can be met. And so it's very valuable. And another aspect of nonviolent communication is learning to recognize when you're having a feeling about something, what need is being represented, what need isn't being fulfilled in that situation. And when you recognize what needs aren't being fulfilled, then you can take steps to meet those needs. If you don't know what your needs are, oftentimes your behaviors, your strategies are not effective. And one of the non-effective ways is to criticize, which is to blame, complain, judge, or indict others. And our universal experience is that that is not an effective approach to dealing with situations. So the consequences of criticizing, of blaming, complaining, judging, and indicting are first on our own physiology, as we've been talking about, and then, of course, as I'm now saying, on others. Most of us aren't really comfortable with people complaining all the time. We're used to it. It's very much a part of our culture. Part of the reason it's part of our culture, Carolyn Myss pointed out years ago, was that it is our first form of bonding. How are you? Oh, let me tell you. Okay, right? And then you go on and you tell your story of woe. And the person who's listening to you is very sympathetic and say, yes, I know just what you mean. You know, I know how bad it is to have been in the hospital or go to the dentist or whatever else it is that, you know, that has happened to you that you're complaining about. Sometimes it even happens that somebody will say something and then you or someone else will tell their story of woe. And sometimes a certain competition develops about who is the most miserable. But it is actually a form of bonding. It can be a bit of a competition, of course, because we're also trying to develop a certain status. I am the most miserable person here. right? And so everybody should feel sympathy for me. But aside from the awkwardness of that situation, it is a form of bonding. It's a form of establishing connection. I tell you my story, you tell me your story. We have a connection now in our misery. But to say it kind of simply, that gets old. It gets old fairly fast, actually, although a lot of people do it because they don't know what else to do. But if you think about it, most of us don't really enjoy the person who's always complaining. And probably our strategy for dealing with that is to say something conciliatory. Yes, that was really a terrible thing. And I'm so glad that you're past that now. And then you go talk to somebody else in the room for fear that they're going to come up with another story because they want you to say, oh, you poor thing, tell me more. Because that way they stay in the center of attention. And that attention is what they really want. They need attention and connection. And that's the fundamental principle of nonviolent communication. It's just that the strategy for creating connection is not a very effective one. If we want to create effective connection with people, then we have to explore what their needs are so that we can relate to them and be empathetic with them. And if they do the same with us, then we can have an empathetic relationship, a mutual empathy for each other, and a really deep sense then that we are connected. We know each other. And it doesn't have to be about the things that are bugging us, right? They can be about the things that we enjoy. And most of us find that it actually is a lot more fun to visit with people, to talk to people, to feel connected to people about what matters to them and what they enjoy rather than about what's hurting them or making them unhappy. We like to be around happy people. And so that uplifts us. So those are the major problems then with complaining and blaming and judging and indicting, being critical about life and about life situations. Is it hurts us physiologically, it doesn't solve our problems, and others may not like us very much. They may also, I didn't mention this, they may also not trust us so much because they wonder what you're going to say about them. You wonder what they're going to say about you when you're not there. So they, there's a certain amount of talking behind the back that can go on. Okay, so moving right along here so we don't go too late. So the solution to this, when we understand what the nature of the problem is, the first thing we have to do is to recognize when we are criticizing, when we are blaming or complaining, judging or indicting. And one of the very nice ways to do that is to put a rubber band around your wrist. Now, I got this approach from a guy named Will Bowen, and he has a place called complaintfreeworld.org. I'm going to hold this up. Hopefully people can read that there. And so he sells these rubber bands. They're very inexpensive. They practically give them away. Complaintfreeworld.org. And what you do is you put the rubber band on one wrist, as I have done here. And when you catch yourself, it's much easier to catch other people, of course, complaining. It takes some training in this. So be patient with yourself with this exercise. It takes a while to learn to recognize when you're doing it. And when you do it, you take the rubber band and you place it on the other wrist. And each time you catch yourself criticizing, blaming, complaining, judging, or indicting others, you move it to the other wrist. The goal is to get through, the first goal is to get through a whole day without moving the rubber band, but being honest about it. That is, you really are attentive to when you are criticizing others. So whenever you criticize others, you move the rubber band to the other wrist. And it'll take you a few days to get good at recognizing that you're doing this. And that's the same, it doesn't have to be people, it can be your computer or your car or your job situation or life or politics or whatever you want to complain about. Now, having said that, the question that always comes is, does this mean that I have to give up evaluating my world and having opinions about it and working to change it. And at first glance, it might seem that that's a logical conclusion. You know, it's like saying, well, no, you can't make any judgments about the world. That is really not the goal of this. It's not the point of this. And that again, it's easier to understand this. And I've found that nonviolent communication is a really good tool for learning that we can make observations about the world and evaluate our needs in terms of the circumstances and make, yes, the word is judgments about those, our situations, make judgments about what's going on and take action to change the situation without complaining. It's how you say it to yourself and to others. In the blog, I gave some examples of this, and I'm going to put on my glasses and actually read this because I think it'll be more effective. And all I have to do is find it. Oh, here, okay. So supposing someone says, you broke the glass. That's a very simple statement of fact. You did, in fact, break the glass. Now, what if they say, I'm angry about that glass being broken? Is that a complaint? Anybody want to? No, it's a statement about how you feel. And it's okay to express your feeling. But what if you said, you made me angry because you broke the glass? Okay, what did you just do? You blamed the other person for how you felt, how you feel. And yet the reason you are angry is all within you. They didn't do it to make you angry. I mean, if they did do it to make you angry, that's a different thing. But, you know, if you just feel badly about it, that's within you. So when you blame others or accuse others or judge others, you fail to take responsibility for your own reaction. You fail to take responsibility for what's going on inside you. I'm putting my hand on my chest here, but the people on the screen can't see that. And so you've missed the opportunity to evaluate your need, the need that's not being met, to look at your reaction, to move the rubber band to the other wrist, and to look at the situation and come back to it objectively. I feel badly because the glass was broken. The other person was just the agent of my karma. They were just there to show me that I have this pattern within me, this trigger within me that stresses me out when this kind of a thing happens. Okay, so that gives you a sense of the kind of language that we use in nonviolent communication, where we transform our reactivity. And in nonviolent communication, we actually have steps that we can even think about. They don't have to be in sequence. But the first thing is we have to catch when we're blaming, complaining, judging, or indicting. And then the next step is to recognize how we are feeling. And as we do that, we have to identify then what our needs are. What is my need in this situation? And you can find online lists of human needs. And it's like a whole page, the one I use, just lots and lots and lots and lots of needs. And some of them are more superficial, you might say, and others are really profound. Like we all have a need to breathe. So if somebody is keeping me from breathing, you know, I have an immediate need to breathe. But most of the time, it's not quite that dramatic, right? It's more of a situation of I need to be respected, right? I need to be heard, things like that. And so if we're having in a situation with somebody and they're not hearing us, then we need to find strategies that they're going to hear us. What's the usual strategy if people aren't hearing us? We raise our voice, right? Right. We make a lot of noise, and we often put a tone in our voice that suggests anger or frustration, right? Or we may fly into a rage, right? But those things don't usually bring a resolution to our situation. And so what we need to learn to do is to work with someone with our situation, but we have to know what it is that we need. Now, usually in a situation that's intense, just saying, oh, I have a need for, respect, or I have a need to be heard, that's probably not going to be received and respected because the other person isn't ready to do that. And so you have to establish some connection. And in nonviolent communication, what we teach is that you explore what's going on in the other person. So, like if a boss is pushing you about a deadline, it can be helpful if you say, I hear you say that you're really concerned that we get this project done by such and such a time, and you're concerned about whether or not I'm going to make enough of a contribution to reach that goal. Is that correct? And oftentimes, if you just say something like that, you may find words that are a little bit more conversational. I used a little bit more formal language. But if you say that in a more conversational way, perhaps the person say, yes, that's exactly what I'm concerned about. I really want to make sure that you understand that. And then you can say, so do you now understand that I understand that, you want to meet this deadline? That's extremely disarming, by the way. Can you just imagine somebody saying that to you? And the result usually is the person goes like, yes, I do understand that. And then you can say something like, well, good, then we're on the same page, aren't we? And you can just see some very authoritarian boss going like, yeah, yes, we're on the same page. and then they leave your office, they stop bugging you. If somebody sends you a message, perhaps an email, that bosses often do that right now these days. They don't communicate directly with you, but face to face, they send you an email, and you read the email, and you may get very angry, right? And you have you're triggered, and you have all that reaction. But what you type back is, "Yep, I got it," and you send that back to them. Now, what are they going to do with that? Oh, he's got it. Well, maybe they're going to question you. They write it back. Do you really? And you write back, yes, I really do get it. See, there's no emotion in that, even on a computer screen, right? It's just a statement of fact. I get it. Okay. It's extremely disarming. It's amazing how many people put up, particularly in workplace situations, because I wind up having to deal with these with clients quite a bit. They just put up with situations. And what do? They complain to coworkers. They complain to their significant others. They complain in the bar or the dining, the restaurant or whatever, about the situation. But they never say anything to the boss in a way that the boss can hear it. That's the key thing, is they have to say it in a way that the boss can hear that. So if you do that, then if you find the ways of communicating, of connecting with people, of creating empathy between people, then needs can actually be met. But it does take some skill. It takes some practice. Frankly, it takes some study. And I regard that, for myself at least, as a lifelong undertaking. Because like everybody else, I was programmed to complain. I still do it to the computer a lot. And my computer still loves me, I think. No, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just does what it does. Okay, good example. So when we stop complaining and start approaching situations effectively, we get to, first of all, on the level of physiology, enjoy a profound relaxation in our mind and in our body. We feel good. We feel positive. And then others can enjoy us more and even trust us more, in case they were not trusting us because we were, so negative. One of the things you'll find is you have more energy for life. You feel more vital because you're in control of your life. You're not just a like a computer, what's it called? GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, like that. If you're wired like that, you complain, right? Something goes in, garbage goes in, right? Some situation, a trigger, and then what comes out? Some complaint or some blaming of somebody else. When you're not doing that, you have a lot more energy, because a stress reaction is a very depleting kind of reaction. Yes, you feel pumped up, but it wears the body down. And the good news is that when you give up being negative, being positive actually comes naturally. It's as simple as that. When you actually learn not to make negative, meaning hostile, angry, unhappy reactions to things, you find out that you make positive reactions to things. You feel good about yourself. You feel good about your situation. You're in control as much as one can ever be in control. But that's another topic. So, any questions about what I've just been presenting? And otherwise, we'll move into the group clearing session. Okay. Anybody in the chat? Nope. Not seeing anybody offering anything in the chat. I'll give you a few seconds more. Very good. Okay, I'm going to